Hi, this is JD Wisgo from self.japanese.com, and this is TransLiterary Lab number 5, 文学翻訳ラボ第5番. Alright, so, just as a reminder for those of you who are new to this series, TransLiterary Lab is about taking a short Japanese fiction passage, typically what we might call literature, a little bit older Japanese, and I'll be going through a few lines of that, maybe a paragraph or two, doing basically a research to understand what the words mean, what the passage means, and then doing a little bit of translation of that, sort of live in real time. And if there's any research involved, kind of do that as part of the process. I've done minimal pre-research before this episode and before the previous episodes that I recorded. And really the focus of this is not necessarily to get a perfect translation result, but it's more about showing what steps are involved in translation and to kind of pose some questions for you to think about and to kind of help those who are interested in becoming translators or kind of like just interested in seeing what translation is about. So today I've picked a new work to go over, a work I haven't looked at yet in any previous episodes, and it's going to be Kodama by Mori Ogai, who's a fairly famous writer. Sate, hajimaru zo. Okay, so I've already opened the page for this work in Aozora Bunko, which, as you probably know, is a site where you can get free texts for Japanese literary works. A lot of these are classics. So this is Kodama by Mori Ogai. And I've just went ahead and pre-prepared, just took the first few lines and I cut and paste into my text editor. And I went ahead and edited the furigana, because when you paste, it doesn't get represented correctly. So I added these parentheses. And I also made spaces between the paragraphs. But besides that, there's not really much else I've done in advance. And you notice here I sort of have broken it down by paragraphs, not sentences. I could break it out by sentences. I think I will do that actually. I'm going to go ahead and break this down sentence by sentence, and I'll have an extra space to kind of show the paragraphs. Okay, cool. So now we have basically... we're going to try to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the first 4 paragraphs, which are pretty short. And this will be the first paragraph. So I'm going to go through this. And first, as usual, I'm just going to read the text just to kind of get a feel for what it's like. Okay, just the parts that I'm going to be translating. Right. So we'll start here. 岩が屏風のように立っている. Let's see. Now this here, I think it's... I actually forgot the reading on this one, so let me double check. 登山 OK 登山をする人が初めて見山薄雪草の白い花を見つけて喜ぶのはここの谷間である。フランツはいつもここへ来て春ルロを春ルオと呼ぶ。Okay, so got some tongue twisters there, but basically what I want to do is double check the reading of this. I said tanima, but let me make sure. Tanima or tani-aida? I think tanima is a little more common. All right, so let's go over this first sentence and see what we got here. So it's kind of short, but it's, I think, a little bit difficult, partially because of the words, but partially just because of the way that it's phrased. So this first sentence here is pretty short. Iwa ga byobu no you ni tatteiru. So iwa, I'm guessing, is rock. This is I think an older kanji that's not really used much anymore. So let's double check that this iwa is what we think it is. And I'm guessing it's rock. So you notice this kanji is in the dictionary, and this is one of the kanjis for rocks that I'm more familiar with. So it looks like it is rock. And we could double check and see if iwa means anything else. In the Japanese dictionary, there's not much else. So Japanese dictionary has a few other words, but it looks like these are related to rock. So I'm pretty sure it's a rock. And iwa, just to compare it to a word like maybe ishi, is a little bit bigger rock. We'll just keep that in mind. Now byobu, I believe, is a folding screen, but let me double check this word. It's not a word I'm too familiar with. Okay, it is a folding screen with 2 more decorative panels. So we'll keep that in mind. And no yo ni tatteiru. So the grammar here is pretty straightforward. No yoni means basically like, to do something like. And here it's sort of an adverbial usage, I guess you could say. Tatteiru is basically standing, comes from tatsu, right? So let's just kind of do a quick rough translation of this. and see what we end up with, right? Now, of course, we have iwa, right, which is rock. It could also mean rocks. It could be rendered as a rock. It could be the rock. There's a few different ways we can render it in English. So let's kind of make a guess, and after we go a little bit further, we might come back and edit that and kind of refine it. Now, keep in mind, I haven't read through this whole piece, and I'm not intending to as part of this exercise. So we'll just do our best based on what we're doing kind of on the fly here. So, okay, let's just say the rocks stood like folding screens. Now, this is literally what it means. Now, it doesn't sound that good, especially for those who are not really familiar with what a folding screen is. So one thing that I like to do is to just kind of see visual representation if I'm not sure about something. So if I do like byobu here, let's see what it actually looks like, right? So it is one of these things that folds, and I think these are pretty common where I live in America. You can kind of see these at a bunch of furniture stores. So it's basically a folding screen. So I'm not too sure what the metaphor is here. And it might take a little more research. Let me double check that there's no other meanings in Japanese. Now here we go. This is the key part here. A wall of rock, a perpendicular cliff. So this is interesting because it's typically a folding screen, right? But we see there's sort of a special word where there's byobu iwa, I assume is the reading for this, which is a wall of rock. So it's kind of like a type of rock, which is, I guess, sort of a metaphor or comparison. And we can check here and just kind of skim this definition here. It's made of wood or paper. Talking about the description here, which is kind of consistent with my understanding, and used for protecting from wind, etc. It may have stuff written on it, words or pictures. So that's not helping too much. So let's keep this for now, and we can come back to it later. Okay? So we had this word here, which I had to check the reading for, tozan, which this is noboru, to climb. This is yama mountain, so it's mountain climbing. So tozan o suru hito ga hajimete miyama usu yukiso. So this is the long word here. Now, I'm guessing, I'm definitely not familiar with this word. Fortunately, we had Furigana here to help us out. But what does this mean? So let's first of all see if it's in the dictionary. Of course, that's the first reason. Unfortunately, we have a Japanese definition. Let's check English. Of course, there's not an English one. So the best we get is deep mountains, which is kind of a guess because it's fukai in yama. So if we go back to the Japanese definition, we basically see it's a type of plant. So here we have kikuka. I think this is has to do with the definition of the plant here. Ederu aisu. I guess that's a type of plant. Okay, so there's some description here. Pretty detailed description. And then we have the last part at the end, which is sort of another name for it. So let's take this and just see what we end up with here. Okay, so now we end up with a Latin name. And what we could do is just kind of just see if we can get a rough draft of what this might be called. What I'm going to do now is let's take this here and let's just use this Latin name to look for English, because that might be easier. Okay, so we're getting some names that I'm not too familiar with, but again, this is just a rough draft. So this looks like it's the official name of some plant, and it's kind of a long name. So I don't see native to Japan, a rare species, so I don't even know if this plant really exists much in modern times. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this for now. There's hopefully a better name. And just due to the fact that this is kind of a long word and it's giving the reading, it's probably something that's not, that maybe the average person is not familiar with, I'm guessing. So back to this sentence though, right? The people that are mountain climbing, or a person that mountain climbs. So now let's look at the grammar here. Hajimete miyama usu yukiso no shiroi hana o mitsukete yorokobu no wa koko no tanima de aru. Okay, so the grammar here is a little tricky. First thing to keep in mind is that this is a ga. Now, when you have a ga, it's typically more likely to bind with a verb in the middle of a sentence. And by that, I mean this verb here. Right? If this was a wa, I think it would be more likely to be kind of separate from this verb. In other words, this suruhito, the hozan no suruhito, is more likely to be the subject of this verb, right? Yorokobu, which means to enjoy, right? So that means this is kind of separate, right, from the rest of the sentence. So koko no tanima. So this valley, right? Literally the valley here, right? So what we have here is, right, we have the people, right? Now, this is the people that are mountain climbing. They're going to be finding the white flower called Lintopodium faure, right? And basically enjoying, or what's a better, let's look for some better words for yorokobu. Now, enjoy, appreciate, there's probably something even better than that. Be glad, delighted, happy, rejoice, pleased. So we're starting to get the feel for that. And another thing we could do just to get a feel for that is look at some synonyms, and get please, greatly, enchant, captivate, and trance. So we got some ideas here, right? So, and I kind of like charm now that I'm reading this here, just again for a rough translation. So let's start by just kind of doing a literal translation of this, right? So, literally this sentence says, the place, let's switch it around, switch the order around. This valley, right, is where the mountain climbers, I spelled that right, I don't know if that's one word or two, if the mountain climbers, now this hajimete is typically first, like the first time they did it, like kind of hajimemashite expression that's used when you first meet somebody, but this valley is where the first climbers first found the white flower named, and I'm going to put this in quotes here, named Lintopodium faure. All right, I'm going to make this capital F just for now. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. Right? So this is pretty literally close to what we have here. This valley is where the mountain climbers first found the white flower named so-and-so. Okay, so now literally this kind of switches around the order, right? It says the place. Now actually I realized I forgot something. I forgot to put the enjoy the charm part, right? First found the white flower named, all right, and were charmed by it. Now the grammar here feels a little awkward, especially having this by it at the end. So what we could do is try to clean this up a little bit, but I'm going to come back to it. I want to get a rough translation down, and then we'll kind of operate on that, tweak that as we kind of gradually refine things, okay? So let's just move on to the next sentence for now. フランスはいつもここへ来て、春ろうと呼ぶ. All right, so I think I might have misread this the first time, but this is 春ろう, right? 春ろうと呼ぶ. Okay. So, フランス sounds like a country, but I'm pretty sure it's like France, like, I'm not sure if that's a German name, but it sounds like a name for somebody who's from Europe. It's not likely to be a Japanese name. It definitely doesn't sound like that. Now we could check. It's probably going to give us France, yeah, F-R-A-N-Z. And there's apparently somebody famous who had this name or something. But I think we have a good guess, F-R-A-N-Z, no T. All right, so, friends, いつもここへ来て、春ろうと呼ぶ. Okay, so, literally this says, friends always came here and called this flower, now, haruro. Haruro. So, what's that? Haruro. All right, we'll just try this. There's a few different ways to write this because obviously in English we could use L or R to represent the ru sounds, but let's try this now. Friends always came here and called this flower. All right, so this seems a little weird to me because itsumo, so he's always coming here, right? And he called it this. But let's just leave this for now. So now, I think this is asa, but let me check before I get started. Yeah, asa, which by the way is hemp, flax. All right, so let's just read this next one. Asa no yo na burondo na atama o furidatte. Let's check the reading on this. If it's furitatsu or furidatsu. Furitateru. So it would be furitatsu, right? So let's start over. Asa no yo na burondo na atama o furitatte. どうかしたらローマ法政 Let's check these readings too. Ho, which is the Pope, I think. Or no, Ho is also a word for Pope, but in this case it's emperor who joined the Buddhist order. Definitely not a word I'm too familiar with. Now this here though, it looks like the Roman Pope. Now Ho, the word I knew, if you look up Ho, it also says the Pope. So I'm guessing this is an alternate reading for Pope. And the reason is the word before it, which you may not have seen the kanji, but the furigana is saying Roma, which is Rome, right? It's clearly Rome. it looks like it's the Roman Pope. So I think that's that maybe what we're going to be going with. So now we have court and kyute. And let's move on and see でも生け取られていきそうな高音で春郎と呼ぶのである. Okay, so it's getting a little tricky here, but let's see. We have capture, ikidori. All right, so capture alive. So this sounds like it's probably used, here you can see, for animals. And we're talking about a flower, but that's okay. So it looks like どうかしたら. All right, and then let's finish this sentence out. Okay, good. So let's kind of go piece by piece here because it's a long sentence, and we'll just do our best with what we know. 朝のようなブロンドな頭を振り立って. Okay, so this first phrase is pretty straightforward. Okay, this part here. This is basically a blonde head, literally, like flax. So you can think of like a flax and probably the color of flax. And if you're not sure, right, you can look up flax and kind of see what the color is, if that's going to help. Maybe a color like this. I'm assuming not the seed form, but something like this. So it's golden. I'm pretty sure golden is the nuance that we want here. Okay, now this furitatsu, furu is to kind of like wave, tatsu is to stand, but let's see what this furi, that's only in the Japanese here. So sakan ni furu, so this is like to basically wave to a large extent. Here we have koe o hariageru. I'm not sure if this is what's related because it's about a voice. So it's probably closer to the first meaning. Now, if you don't know sakan, you can double check. It's basically extensively, eagerly, to a large extent is one way to look at it. And it also has other meanings: prosperous, vigorous, lively, active, energetic. So it's kind of like to a big extent here. Now, here we have dokashitara. Now, dokashitara, let's look at this. Dokashita. Now, dokashita is basically when something happens, you say dokashita, like did something happen? I guess it's like doshita is if something happened. So dokashita is a pretty similar expression, but in this case we get dokashita, which is nani ka chotto shita, futoshita. Which, okay, futoshita is basically kind of like, how should I say, suddenly would be one way to talk about. So let's look at the English. Suddenly, by chance. Futoshita. So accident, casual, slight. So there's a lot of different nuances here, but I think impulse, but it's sort of like a sudden, unpredictable thing. So I'm pretty sure that this here, it's not what I'm too familiar with. And we could even go ahead and check just to see if there's, how about, I don't think that's right. Douka shiteiru. So I don't see too much of a direct hit. We could do more searching with this, but just based on, let's see what this comes up. By mere chance. Okay, so this is a little bit close to what I was already thinking. It's kind of like something just happened to occur by mere chance, by some chance, somehow or other, in some way. Okay, so something like it just happened. So let's look at this here. Ikiso na koon. So koon is a high-pitched noise. High tone, high-pitched sound. And again, we're talking about calling the flower haruro. Right? This is yobu, right? Which kind of has a few different meanings. It can be like calling somebody like, hey, come here. Or it could also be like you're calling, like you're naming something. Like you're saying, I'm going to call this so-and-so, right? You can see that's basically here the number 2 meaning. So again, let's kind of go from the first part here, right? So we'll just say, waving his head, his blonde, let's just say his blonde head, golden like flax, right? So this is pretty close to what it says. The golden part is not there, but I think that's kind of the, actually no, the blonde part is here. Golden, let's just say golden blonde like flax. We'll try with that, try that out. Okay. どうかしたらローマ法廷の宮廷でも生き取られていきそう. Now remember, this 生きそう is basically like. It seems like someone's like to do something. So this is kind of a definitely a tricky expression here. Let's figure out what this means. So the whole sentence is involving, he's waving his head, and this is of course France, right? Because that's the only person that was really introduced in this passage so far. So France, here he's calling the flower haluro, and he's calling it again, but in this case, the description is focusing on his koon, which is the high-pitched voice, right? High tone. So, hold on my flex. He called the flower haluro with a high-pitched voice. Okay. And again, we have this no de aru. And the no here is kind of like a description. It's a little hard to translate literally, but it has a feeling of like describing something or something being factual. So we'll keep that in mind. He called the flower hallo with a high-pitched voice that sounded as if he was going to be, let's see, ikidorarete ikiso. Okay. So this is a little tricky. So to be honest, I'm not sure what they're talking about here. So let's look up this combination, right? And we can see here we had Romao again. So this is actually the same story. So this actual combination is pretty rare, right? And what we can do here is let's change it to the other whole, which is Pope. Just want to see exactly, I assume they're talking about some sort of royal court for the Pope. This is the one I'm more familiar with, right? So this actually comes up here. Now this is actually, looks like the same story. Yeah, it's the same story. And it's actually using a different kanji. But this validates we're talking about the actual Pope, not something related to Buddhism. Okay, so again, there's a little bit of interpretation here. But this is basically the court. So offhand, I'm not sure what the court or the place where the Pope is. We could just search for the Pope and look for some details on what you call where the Pope is. I'm not sure if court is the right word. We can just look for court here. Right, court. Okay, papal court. Okay, so the court might actually be a good term, right? So again, this is a rough translation, and there's some difficult stuff here. So we're just going to do our best. Going to be taken alive to the court, or just say maybe royal. I'm not sure if royals are, or just say court of the Pope of Rome. Okay, so it's definitely rough here. Now we didn't capture the do kashitara, which is like, again, this is like this feeling of suddenly, as he was. Let's actually put that in. If he's going to be suddenly taken alive. All right, so this is definitely rough, right? Let's come back to it though. I want to try to finish this these passages, and then we can finish and come back to it and kind of do a second iteration, right? 呼んでしまってじーっとして待っている. Okay, so again, 呼んで comes from yobu. We're talking about calling out the name of the flower, and this shimatte has a lot of nuances, but it can have a kind of a surprising influence, a kind of like a negative influence, basically a nuance to the sentence. It's a little hard to translate literally, but let's just kind of try to translate this here. So in this jito is kind of, a lot of times you see this as jito, but I think jito is another way. It basically means to wait in like a still, without, how should I say, kind of wait quietly. And let's just double check the dictionary if there's a better way to reference that. Still, okay, jito, right? And you can see stand still, patiently. All right, so there's a nuance of patience. Maybe we could even kind of capture that. Okay, so he called out the flower's name. Now this isn't literally there, but I don't want to just say he called out because it doesn't sound complete. He called out the flower's name and waited patiently. Right? So just keep that, okay? So now he's obviously waiting for something to happen. Now we have, I forgot to put this furigane in. しばらくすると大きい鈍いコントルバスのような声でハルローと答える. Okay, so this almost sounds like a joke, like you're saying hello, haruro. Interesting. Well, let's translate this and we'll think about it, okay? Okay, in a little while. Okay, so now we have oki nibui. So nibui is dull, I think, and the second word, or this word here, is obviously contrabass. Like, I think that's the type of voice. Dull, blunt, slow. But let's double check what this is. Contrabass. Looks like there's a different reading for this. Contrabass. So what does contrabass mean in English? right? Contrabass, music instruments, doesn't mean anything else. So it's a contrabass. So let's just use that word as is. I'm not too familiar with this, but it's clearly orchestral instrument. Okay, so I think we have enough confidence to at least attempt this translation. Okay, a large, in a little while, a response came back in a voice like a large, dull contrabass. Okay, and I'm going to put this here, colon, just a haruro. Okay, and I'm just going to do an exclamation point. It's not literally there, but I think that's part of the nuance here, right? So now we have kore ga kodama de aru. So this is the title, and when I first read this, I didn't know the reading. And if you look in the dictionary, it's actually here we actually do get a mokuse, right? Oh, it is in the dictionary, mokuse. It's not in the Japanese English, but it's in the Japanese, and we get kino, and I think this is from yosei, which is a spirit, right? Yeah, it's a spirit. So you may know the word yosei, which means spirit. So here it's basically saying kino sei, which is basically a spirit of a tree, or probably a forest. Kodama is another way to read it. Now, kodama here is a word which means echo, I think. Let's check though. Echo. So this is a little confusing, right? So this first definition is basically saying it's a spirit of the tree and an echo, right? How is that the same meaning? Honestly, I don't know. But here we have metanoru no betsme. So I don't know what this second one is, but I don't think it's related. So we basically have two things. We have this tree spirit thing, right? And then we have an echo. So I'm guessing that somehow the meaning of these two words is kind of linked up. There's a connection. So now the fact that we're getting the same voice coming back, right, makes more sense that it's going to be the echo definition. Now, originally I thought when I saw the characters here, right, this kodama and the way that this is written is kinose, I thought it was about some forest spirits, and maybe it still is. But at this point in time, it looks like it's just about an echo. So I think we'd have to read through this whole story to figure out the connection between kodama and an echo and forest spirit. Maybe there's some historical relevance here. But what do we do at this point? Again, we could read the whole story, and to be honest, if you're reading something at this difficulty level, I would recommend reading the whole thing. It's not that long, reading the whole thing before attempting the translation. So in this case, I chose not to. So I'll just do my best based on a guess, and I'll come back to this later. So we have kore ga. Now this ga is really important, right? Kore ga, right? So it's basically like there's an implied question of, what or who is the kodama, right? Well, this is the kodama. So this is like emphasizing, like, if you don't know what the kodama is, this is the kodama. And it seems like an echo. So I really see two options for translation at this point, right? One is to use the word echo, because it seems like an echo. But because there's a little bit of discrepancy as related to this tree spirit thing, forest spirit, and echo, just due to the fact that the dictionary has both of these in it, right? It's definitely a little confusing. We can just read this here if it says anything. This is the tree spirit, kodama. So here we have furuku kara kino dama no. Okay, so this actually kind of explains the discrepancy here, right? This says furuku wa kino, I think this is rei no shiwaza to kangaete ita koto kara yama, tani nado de okoru oto no hankyo. Okay, so this is describing the echo, and it looks like it's saying furuku wa, that's basically in the past, a long time ago probably. Historically, it was thought that it was as a result of the tree spirits. So we see that that's kind of interesting, right? So this word kodama, we're learning about some of the history of Japanese. And when you look at kodama, you might wonder what, kodama, echo. And this is actually how it's written. And I don't know if I knew this reading. I've seen it with hiragana, and I've never really thought about the way it's written. Now notice here, this is not the same second kanji. This is rei instead of sei, but they both mean spirit. So this is interesting. It's like interesting. It's a tree spirit. So anyway, I think we're starting to understand where this story is going to go. So at this point, because there's sort of an importance about this word kodama and the origin of it, the definition of where it came from, I'm just going to use the word kodama, right? And I don't think I can do italics in this editor, but I would probably use italics at this point, right? This was the kodama. And I'll do quotes now, double quotes, although I might use italics in another iteration. This was the kodama. This sounds a little awkward, just the phrasing here. I could also say it was this, that was the kodama, but that's even more awkward. So I'll just keep this now. Okay. So let's see. Now that we've went through this text, which is a little tricky, I want to kind of go back to the top and see if we can adjust things, kind of tweak it, and potentially fix at least one mistake. So now that I've went through this part, I think my interpretation of yobu is actually not calling something in terms of naming it. Remember, if we look at the definitions here, we have call, address. I think it's actually more calling out, like koe o kakeru, because there's an echo, right? We're hearing an echo. I think that's what it is. So if we just quickly go through this, now I don't think he's calling the flower halu. I think that was my first assumption. But if you notice here, the focus is actually the valley itself. And then in the next paragraph, it says he called out. So I think it's talking about the valley. He came to the valley and he just called out, right? So let's just say yelled out harudo, right? We'll look up what that means in a minute, which I haven't done yet. He called out haluro, whatever that is, with a high-pitched voice. Okay. And then he yelled out and waited patiently. Okay, so let's check haruro. Now that I'm reading this, I'm actually thinking maybe it's just hello, which should be kind of funny. Maybe it's simpler than I thought. Haruro. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of the same. Actually, a Wikipedia page on this, which is interesting. We can actually look at this. There's no reason not to check Wikipedia. Right. Yamano tanima de itsumo haruro to yobi kodama ga kotaete kureru no o matte ita Frantz ga seichou shite ite. Okay, so kodomo tachi no haruro ni. So I think this is him calling out. Maybe a hello, something like that. Basically like in English, you say hello, and we kind of hear a hello accent back. So I don't know if it's France, if that's because he's German. Now let's check. I mean, I can just kind of make a guess. France, name, where from. Right? I'm kind of reading into here, but we get German, which is what I got. So what is hello in German? Hello. Okay, this actually is starting to kind of match up. So hello is similar to that. So what we could do now is actually make this hello, kind of keep it in German, which is what I think it is. Because the sound here was, where was it? Haruro. Yeah, I'm still not sure if that haruro. So haruro. Yeah, I'm guessing that's what German. We can do this and see if we get any hits. Yeah, I'm guessing this is about the German hello. So I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's my guess. It's not guaranteed, but that's basically my best interpretation of this. All right, so we've done about 30 minutes or so, and I don't think we're going to have time to go through this again once more as a full iteration. But before we finish this part, I would like to focus on the first line here. Iwa ga byobun no you ni tatte iru. The translation we ended up with is the rock stood like folding screens. So the problem I have with this is that the metaphor of folding screens is really not clear. What does that exactly mean, right? I mean, a Western audience may not be able to picture a folding screen, and even if they can, what is it saying? So if we go back to the dictionary, and we see here, byobu, a wall of rock, perpendicular cliff. So it isn't necessarily, rock is not necessarily the right word. It can also be cliff. But if we go here and just to double check, see we get sheer cliff, perpendicular. So I think the fact that it's sheer, it's perpendicular, basically straight up and down vertical, is what's being emphasized here. So if we go back to this, just say a sheer cliff stood. How about a cliff stood? So let's look at the word sheer. Is there any other words we can use instead? Utter, precipitous, vertical, perpendicular, bluff, sharp. So a shift stood, a sheer cliff stood. Stood. Let's see. It's a perfectly vertical, like a folding screen. So again, the metaphor here, I don't think it's going to be that easily understood by a Western audience, but at least here we're adding the detail with sheer and perfectly vertical to kind of emphasize that. All right, so a sheer cliff stood perfectly vertical like a folding screen. So to be honest, I'm still not too happy with this, and I want to come back to this and iterate it. And also the rest of the passage here, I want to come back to that. Now, one thing though, before we finish, I was thinking about this last sentence. This was the kodama. So I think we should probably emphasize the fact that what it is with the echo, the fact that it's an echo. This was the kodama, the echo. Let's see, this is the kodama, the echo. So again, we'll probably come back to this and maybe we may tweak the way that this is worded. But just saying kodama, right, the average audience is not going to get that this means echo, right? Whereas a Japanese audience would know the word kodama means echo. Even if they're not familiar with the way this is written, because it's not the typical way, they're going to know kodama means echo. So I think we should kind of have this in. All right, so I think we'll save the rest of the iterations, sort of going through this another one or two more times to clean up some of the prose. We'll save that for the next episode, episode number 6. But I just wanted to emphasize this time we had a little bit more difficult text than some of the previous episodes, and it took more time to actually understand what the text was actually saying. Like specifically, there was the verb yobu, which I had misinterpreted, and this haruro, which I kind of interpreted a different way. So it was a little tricky to understand. We had this sentence here, which was kind of long, and it took a little while to kind of parse it, go through it, and then the kodama. So there's several elements that were a little hard to figure out. So we spent more time just for the understanding and the interpretation, and we didn't spend that much time cleaning up the English. So we'll save that for next time. But it's really okay when you do your own translations. You know, you want to spend as much time as possible to make sure you understand the text, right? Don't rush to the translation until you really have a good feeling about the text. You know, you want to make sure that you understand what the text is saying is separate, you know, from the translation. And you can kind of do it all at once, but you don't ever want to forget, you know, the original text. You make sure that you have high confidence in your interpretation of that. At the end, I wanted to briefly mention a new book release that I did just the other day. It's called The Spirit Drum by classic author Kyusaku Yumeno. I translated this to English and published an ebook on Amazon. It's a novella about a centuries-long curse and how the curse affects 2 families across 3 generations. It has an interesting story and also has a lot of influences and some interesting things from early 20th century Japan. So for those of you interested in that time period, I would highly recommend taking a look. I'll put a link in the YouTube video description if you want to check out the page on Amazon. Thanks for watching.